Reasonable, Professor Morandi, though, in return for the release of, what, $100 billion worth of trade, effectively allowing Iran to carry on and release its oil and sell its oil on the world platform. Isn't it reasonable to link some sanctions with human rights and domestic repression and state-sponsored terrorism?
Well, I must say that with Julian Assange in prison in the UK, I don't think the Americans or the European or the British have much to say about human rights when it comes to holding this reporter in solitary confinement in this way. And again, when we speak about human rights in Iran, I think the maximum pressure campaign is an act of war. It is an intentional attempt to harm women and children. And we're not just seeing it in Iran, it's in Afghanistan. Right now, people are dying of starvation or are on the verge of dying of starvation because of the sanctions that the Americans have imposed recently.
And what of Iran's influence with Hezbollah, Hamas, Yemen, Iraq, and the funding for weapons and militias in those countries which perpetuate conflict?
Well, I think if we go back, we'll all recall that it was those groups in Iraq and Syria that stopped ISIS and Al-Qaeda, the same Al-Qaeda that the U.S. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor of the United States, on February the 12th, 2012, wrote in an email to Hillary Clinton that in Syria, Al-Qaeda is on our side. So the Iranians were fighting the Al-Qaeda, which was on the American side. In Lebanon, I think you know quite well that Hezbollah was created as a result of the Israeli occupation of Lebanon. And in Yemen, I think it's obvious what the Saudis are doing.
Does Iran deny funding Hezbollah?
Iran doesn't consider Hezbollah to be a terrorist organization. If it wasn't for Hezbollah, we'd have...
And Hamas?
Iran considers Hamas to be a part of the Palestinian people that are subjugated by an apartheid regime. In Yemen, your British advisors are helping the Saudis bomb the Yemeni people day and night. A hunger siege is imposed on the country. I think we have to sort of look at it from a different perspective. I think if we're balanced, it is Western countries that have destroyed Libya. Let's forget Venezuela and Cuba. Libya, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, across the board through sanctions, through warfare, through dirty wars. And they can't come, and this is not even their part of the world. This is Iran's neighborhood. But ultimately, the JCPOA has nothing to do with any of these issues. It's about the nuclear program. The Iranians have agreed to limit the nuclear program if these sanctions are lifted. And all of these sanctions, whether it's Iran's defense capability, linked to Iran's defense capability, or terrorism, or whatever it is that the Americans like to call it, all of them were a part of the maximum pressure sanctions. And those sanctions violate the JCPOA because according to the nuclear deal, the Americans and the Europeans have to facilitate the normalization of Iranian trade.
Okay.
And by keeping those sanctions, that's impossible. So they can't have their cake and eat it.